We are live. That's right. The Great American Bash NXT Night 1 predictions taking place this upcoming Tuesday, with the second week, of course, being the following Tuesday. Hi, my name is Steve. I am your host of the most here for SCW, and I'm joined by old Ed next to me, Ed Fries. We're going to kick things off then with talking about NXT Great American Bash. Obviously, at the time of recording, only 3 matches have been announced. We've got a concert as well, which is something really exciting about. And of course, as well, then we've got Night 2, which of course is the following week. We know 1 match already, but I figured we could have a little bit of, I don't know, a bit of a gossip, if you don't mind, Ed. I like a bit of a gossip, and we can speculate what's coming up on Night 2. And yeah, I mean, to be fair as well, this is something that we've done yearly. So this is the 3rd year in a row that we're actually doing this for the Great American Bash as well. And I want to start by asking how you are and your excitement levels for the Great American Bash.
I'm good. We talk about this every year. We joke around and say it's our contractual obligation that it just so happens to land that we always ask each other to work together during the Great American Bash. I'm excited for this show. A few years ago during the pandemic, this is where Keith Lee won both the titles. That was ruined by Indus Sher accidentally posting the picture the week before when it was taped. But there's something magical, I think, about this one, with the TNA partnership and the bringing in of the Rascals and the bringing in of Joe Hendry and all the potential with Delta being out there, with Stephanie Vacour being out there, with Julia being out there, with Roxanne having a match in week 1. There's so much potential of things to come and teases to come that I'm excited to see what they do. And even if they just give us a great 2 weeks of television, that's fine. It's a TV program this year. So all they have to do is do good TV for 2 weeks, and I'll be happy.
Absolutely. If I had to give you a score out of 10, particularly, especially for Night 1, because that's what we know about so far. But what would be the level between 1 and 10 right now?
8.5 right now for Night 1. I mean, like, everything seems kind of straight down the line on Night 1. You kind of have an idea of what's going to happen, who's going to win. But it's like I said, those potential things that really start to give us the excitement. What happens when Roxanne beats Thea Hale? What happens when Tony D'Angelo beats Tavion Heights? When things like that happen, what happens next in the story is going to be the fun thing.
Interesting indeed. We've done 2/3 of the predictions for Night 1 already. I love it. We're not wasting any time here. Absolutely. No, not a problem at all. But do you know what? I like that, because what you're suggesting is there's more to come, and there's more than just meets the eye with this show. And that's why the excitement level is up there. Because I'm going to be honest with you, if I look at the 3 matches that we currently got right now, the excitement level is not as high for me as it would usually be for an NXT show, mainly because of the fact I feel there's a predictable factor with quite a few of the matches. But I'm probably at a 5 right now, but already by talking to you, that level's already creeped up to a 6, and you've not even started yet. And that's the beauty of this. So as we go along, I'm sure it's going to get better.
That might have to do with what I told you I'm going to talk about during the show, before the show.
Absolutely.
That might have got you a little bit more excited.
And that segment is an 11 out of 10. I'm not going to lie to you. So we're going to get to that 4th on this. But let's dive straight into it. In fact, we're actually going to start that in, because we kind of know the prediction there already. And hey, spoiler alert, I feel the same. I think Tony D'Angelo is going to retain the NXT Heritage Cup here. What's your thoughts with the Heritage Cup? Are you a fan of the British style rules? Does it work for you? How are you feeling with it?
I love the idea of having a match that has completely different rule sets. It changes the way things work. It's kind of what they want WWE Speed to be, but they forgot that you need to have multiple rounds of 3-minute rounds. But because it is literally 6 little mini Speed matches all put together. And I like the idea of the British round system. I saw this live at Battleground 2023, when I was in Lowell for that, when we saw Dragon Lee take on Noam Dar.
Nice. Yes.
I got to see the cup, and I got to see the match live. And it plays so well live, especially at a premium live event. It plays so well. It works so well for television, because if you know you're going to have a round where nothing's really going to happen, you throw it in split screen so we don't miss anything. But you kind of get that commercial break out of the way, and you can just hide around where nothing's going to happen in that little commercial break. And you get to give guys like Tavion Heights, who we haven't seen a lot of, but is getting a push with Damon Kemp not being re-signed, and WWE killing off 2 half of the original Candy Crew, as we call them on Tuesday nights, or the No Quarter Catch Crew, as everybody else calls them. But all in all, the family is Tony needs to be the big deal, so Tony needs to keep winning, and we all know that this is just fight everybody in the Candy Crew until Tony D'Angelo feels generous enough to give Charlie Dempsey that match back. That's what we're all waiting for.
That when you say with what's next, that is the long-term play, isn't it? Is when Charlie Dempsey gets that rematch.
Yep, and I think I honestly think he wins it. I think Charlie Dempsey wins this. I especially think that that's going to involve, as the story is being told right now, Wren Sinclair. I think based on this week's television, I think Wren Sinclair is going to be the reason Charlie Dempsey wins back the Heritage Cup. And then, because we were adding Wren Sinclair to the No Quarter Catch Crew, we go ahead and we get to finally do the eight-person tag that WWE's been building to by having Stax, Luca, Tony, and Adriana Rizzo. And now you add Wren Sinclair in there, and boom, now the Candy Crew is just 3 people plus a woman. So you have that nice, easy numbers to have on a TV taping, right? On a TV show right before we go to No Mercy or right before we get to Halloween Havoc. We have that opportunity to do the 8-person tag going into the big cup match or coming out of the cup match.
What I love is that we're so much on the same wavelength for thinking here. I don't need to ask you. You've answered all my questions without having to ask them, which is fantastic. I feel exactly the same as you with the idea of Wren Sinclair, that she seems to be the determining factor, and Dempsey doesn't want her a part of this group right now, but he's slowly realizing that he's going to have her sticking around, and when she actually does something that really benefits him, he's going to be also glad actually that it's all just turned out to be, well, a beautiful disaster, really, because of the fact that it's all going to turn out, he's going to be on a bed of roses basically at the end of it. He's very, very happy when he gets Heritage Cup back. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it's all going to play out. For me, I think it's a great opportunity for Tavion Heights to have hopefully a breakout moment. But as you said, can't look past Tony D for this one. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I was going to say there's 2 other things I wanted to say. One, Charlie Dempsey this week getting able to show off his comedic and funny side with having the facials he had ringside, trying to help Wren Sinclair win this match was great. But also with Tavion Heights, it's great to be able to go ahead and have WWE continue to pump the idea. Don't forget the Olympics are on, because they're being moved to sci-fi in the United States. I don't know what's happening worldwide, but over here, they're being preempted for 2 weeks of the Great American Bash on a different TV channel. So you're going to have to go look for and find it, which is going to be interesting. But you'll be able to talk about Tavion Heights being a world-class wrestler, being an Olympian, as he was in the Greco-Roman category of the U.S. Olympic team in 2020. So for him, this is a big week where normally in the previous portions of his career, he would be going, to Paris for the Olympics. And this year, he's back at home. He's working here. Let's give him a little publicity. Let's give him a little bit of a rub. And let's see what he's got, because he's the kind of question mark of that group. We know Baby Randy's got stuff going on. We like him. He's funny. He's great. He looks like Randy Orton. It's fine. Charlie Dempsey, he's William Regal's son. We've seen all the great things he can do. We're developing a bit of a personality with him. He's trying to take this mob persona from Tony D'Angelo. There's a whole bunch of fun there that I like with Charlie. So
it's all good times, and hopefully it's all going to work out well. And like you say, Tavion, this is a chance to have a good breakout moment. I've enjoyed the fact that group has also had exposure in TNA recently. It's helped give them a bit more TV time, more exposure for myself as a viewer, and hopefully this is going to continue to do that. But we've both gone for Tony D'Angelo, and we're going to move on now to our next match, which will be Alba Fyre and Isla Dawn versus Metaphors, Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship, since the fact that, well, these titles haven't been really defended, I don't believe, since Dawn and Fyre won them, which is a bit of a shame, really, because both you'd hope would have more of a breakout moment after actually winning these titles in Scotland. But of course, Jackson and Legend won a tag team match, if I'm not mistaken, this past week on NXT, of course, against Carmen Petrovic and Sol Ruka, of course, were the opponents on that occasion. Jakara and Lash do feel like the appropriate people to go for the women's tag team championships, in my opinion, if they're going to come down to NXT. It's good to see Fyre and Dawn come back. But a part of me has a feeling that this could be just a feeder for something that could be playing into SummerSlam or the SummerSlam kickoff.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Isla, Dawn, and Alba Fyre are my girls. I love my girls. They're fantastic. I have this sneaking suspicion that Jakara and Lash might win the NXT Women's the WWE. No, sorry, they're not even the NXT. The WWE Women's Tag Team Championships here, because they haven't been defended. They make such an easy opponent for Sonya Deville's new group. I'm going to steal, I believe it was Mia Yim's line, the stud line. I believe Mia Yim called them on Twitter. But the Sonya Deville, Shayna Baszler, Zoe Stark group. I know both groups are heels. I think on WWE television, especially on the main roster, you could make Jakara and Lash baby faces, get them the exposure on the main roster with talent that you know, understand, and trust, and go ahead and give them that little bit of an opportunity. Go ahead and let them win these titles, because if WWE had any plans for Alba and Isla, they would have done it by now. They won those titles because somebody needed to win in Scotland, and they looked on the card and goes, well, we can't take the title off Bayley, so that's off. We're gonna screw say Drew McIntyre because, well, we always do that, so can't do that one. By the way, he had a great Twitter moment a little while ago.
He did.
At the time of recording. So it's like, oh, well, I guess we're going to have to put the titles on Alba and Isla, because otherwise all of the Scottish people are going to be very angry with us that we've come here again and basically said, no, none of your people can win.
It does have that feeling, to be honest, although Triple H has denied that in the press conference, and obviously said that we've been waiting for the time to get Alba and Isla on our screens, which obviously has materialized a little bit more since winning the titles, but not really in-ring occasions. They've sort of been backstage 30-second skits here and there. This is the feeling I get with this, is that they haven't defended the titles yet. I don't think they have faith really with the teams that are on Raw and SmackDown right now, which is not nice to say, really, because I think, like you said, there's a bigger play out there with the, Sonya Deville's new group with Baszler and Zoe Stark. You've also got the former champions in Belair and Jade who want the titles back. And there are other teams emerging as well. Damage Control, of course, will be always in the mix. And as well, you've got the party girls, Kaden Carter and Katana Chance as well. But I just look at it and say, I think Fyre and Dawn are going to win here. It looks, in my opinion, that we're going to get Belair and Jade perhaps get the title rematch sooner rather than later. And I think it will be a part of SummerSlam, either as the kickoff or as a shorter match on the main show. And I think that's when those titles will go back to Belair and Jade. So I personally believe this is to give Fyre and Dawn a successful championship defense during the title reign. But so mainly so most people don't turn around and say, well, they didn't even successfully defend them once. So everyone would just point to Scotland and say, that's why they won them.
I mean, that's probably the more logical decision. I'm sitting here going like, they could do this fun thing, or they could do the really logical thing, which is just, keep the main roster talent. But the idea of having like a Jakara Jackson and a Lash Legend have these titles and have them pop up when and where they want, have them kind of filter over to Impact. If the titles are in NXT, you can kind of filter these into Impact, and you could have, a Danny Luna and a Killer Kelly taking on, Jody Threat taking on, Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend. And that's something that could be fun. There's a couple teams over there on the TNA side that it's like, if you bring the titles to NXT and you just want to kind of filter them through, you can have a little bit of fun here for a few weeks as you wait to get these divisions back up and running, when you wait to get the stud line back to where they need to be, because we put the titles back on Jade and Bianca. That's great. They deserve titles. They're wonderful people. They do good work. How do we get the titles off of them? How do we do the heel turn for whoever needs to turn heel? It needs to be Bianca Belair. By no means. It cannot be Jade Cargill. It absolutely has to be Bianca. She needs a change. That needs to be the change that she needs to have. But where do you make that switch? Because in my mind, it needs to happen before SummerSlam, for Survivor Series. because the Survivor Series match should be Bianca versus Jade. That should be one of the Survivor Series matches in my mind. And I'm like, well, how do we get there? All right, well, we have to do the heel turn. Well, how do we do the heel turn? Well, what if they lose to Shayna's group at X point? And I'm like, that's where we can do it. We can do it after Bash in Berlin makes a good spot.
It could. If it was Survivor Series, it certainly could. I actually think it could be the split could be starting at the Rumble. Personally, I think it's the Mania match next year. If I had to predict right now, because they want Jade to have that big WrestleMania singles match, and they're building the story of Belair. I mean, I think Charlotte would come back, and I think they wanted to do Belair and Charlotte for this year, but of course Charlotte's injury stopped that. But I still feel now they've made the play, and I feel Jade versus Bianca would be, in my opinion, if I had to guess right now, I think it's going to be the Mania match. But I suppose time will tell on that. But just as a last thing on you said there, the fun thing or the logical thing, or it's the boring thing, really, isn't it? Having the champs retain here. I think it is interesting in a good way. And I've always felt this with NXT, to have championships that are allowed to flirt with Raw and SmackDown. You mentioned TNA as well, but particularly Raw and SmackDown is to help the WWE audience learn who these people are without actually having to call them up. That's their way of getting some exposure and some time on the main roster before actually getting their official call up. Kind of, in a way, kind of like the Street Profits got back in 2019 before they were officially called to Raw. They used to hang around backstage and have these segments each and every week. They were kind of being introduced slowly. If Jackson and Legend were to win those tag team titles, they could experiment and see what they were like competing on a Raw or a SmackDown. They can experiment with the metaphor gimmick. I know Noam Dar's not currently there right now, but it gives all of them a platform and an opportunity to see, well, does this just work in NXT or does it work on Raw and SmackDown as well? And I think that's where a fun thing would come, like you said there. And that's what makes the logical thing for these titles to change hands. But sadly, as I said, I don't see it happening. But do you think that that's the right way to go? Then that's how NXT should get perhaps a bit more flirtatious appearances with Raw and SmackDown. This is a great way to do that.
Yeah, yes and no. I think with the women's tag team division specifically, I think it's a good idea. With most of the divisions, I would honestly say no. I think there's way too many talented people who aren't being used enough as it is on the main roster that you don't want to go ahead and just, use NXT talent just to see what happens and flirt with it. Although that's a good idea, and I like that idea. I think for the women's tag team titles, it makes a lot more sense because there are so few opportunities for other people to go ahead and, use that. Like, what other teams are they pushing down the card that they're not using? Piper and Chelsea. Well, they're selling Chelsea's injury right now, so that's they can't use them. We have the stud line, we have Damage Control, we have Bianca and Jade, and then we have, like you said, Casey Squared, the Party Girls. Other than that, they don't have any real established tag teams that need time to shine. So it would be perfect to bring up a Katana Chance, a metaphor, and see what that works. Plus, you can pick and choose who they work with to make sure that they're working with people whom you trust to get the best out of them, because they are still developing, especially Lash and Jakara. Jakara with her many injuries. Lash is with, as I've always said, having an issue with being a great in-ring talent. But over the past year or so, she's really grown in metaphor to become a talented in-ring professional wrestler. And I'm more excited to see her on my screen every time she wrestles because she's getting better and better.
Absolutely. And I would agree. Chase, the stock has risen certainly in the last 12 months, and it's going to be interesting to see how this tag team match is going to play out. But certainly interesting everyone's thoughts and predictions are for this match as well. But let's drop into the comment section because a few people have been dropping some comments in. Got Dara the Amazing saying, "What's up, guys? Hope you're doing well, Dara. Thank you for joining us." We've also got another half of the Taking Over duo, Astrid Bizarro, in the house. Shame Astrid couldn't be with us here today, but great to see you in the chat and hope that you are keeping well. She does agree, by the way, that with myself that's potentially a Mania match for Bianca and Jade. We'll have to wait and see how it will play out. Dara also says that hoping the Heritage Cup match is good. Have feelings that hopefully it will be a good match, but we both have the same prediction. Dara, hope to know your prediction throughout the stream as well. And Misfit Wrestling Podcast says breaking. I'm going to take a pinch of salt. I've not seen it myself, but they are reporting Tokyo Sports that Miko Satomura will be retiring from pro wrestling in 2025. I know she has made an appearance on the WWE Japan tour over the last 24 hours. She has been teaming with some of the girls from SmackDown. So she has been competing on this tour. So, I mean, she is still active at present.
Can confirm.
Can confirm.
According to multiple sources, Satomura has come to the conclusion that she will try her after carefully considering her future as a professional wrestler this year. The timing of this year has not been decided, but April 2025 marks the 30th anniversary of her debut.
There you go. There you go.
Tokyo Sports.
Fantastic. And say a big thank you to Misfit Wrestling Podcast then for bringing knowledge to that while we are live on air, which is always good to see. Let's move on then to the NXT Women's Championship. We've got Roxanne Perez versus Thea, which I don't think it's much surprise here of who we think is going to win this match here. Obviously, Roxanne Perez has been on the roll of, it feels like, of her career right now since turning heel and having this championship. I think she's done a great job. She's been beating people from different companies. Everyone that's been put in front of her, she's overcome the odds, even when she thinks everybody is against her. However, Ed, I'm kind of going to skip to the chase with this one because, as you said earlier on, you think Roxanne's retaining. It's the what's next. So I guess with a lot of these names that could be rumored to joining, are they what's next?
I think Stephanie Vacour is absolutely what's next. They made sure to put her on that tour of Mexico as soon as they signed her. They forced her. I don't want to say they forced her. They told her that it would be in her best consideration for her WWE career to go ahead and try to cut ties as quickly as possible to be available for those days, because she would have been otherwise unavailable for the Mexico City shows, the house shows in Mexico after she signed. The fact that they've mentioned her on TV at multiple times, the fact that they were showing the footage of her match with the girls backstage on this week's show, I think that Stephanie Vacour is absolutely the next person to show up. Whether or not she wins or not is up for determination. I think the best idea is to put the title on Stephanie as soon as she gets here. And I know, I see some comments in the chat that it's going to be Julia. I can see Julia skipping NXT altogether. Like, I don't like the idea. I don't want her to skip NXT. I think she needs to be there. She said that she's coming to NXT. However, there's one spot right there in Damage Control where you have Dakota Kai as the one piece that doesn't fit. She's, that little song, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. You've got Kairi, you've got Io, you've got Asuka, and then you've got Dakota. I think it would make a whole lot of sense to kick Dakota out like they kicked Bayley out, and for Julia to be that person. Even if she's not on the main roster, to have her bounce back and forth and not necessarily need to challenge for the NXT Women's Championship. Or you hot potato that thing with Stephanie Vacour and Julia until Delta gets there. There's a ton of options, but you don't make Stephanie the big deal that you made her on the Mexico house shows, making sure to have a footage of Damian Priest, welcoming her to the company in Spanish. You don't do all these things to just not make her the focal point of her own thing. And so it's like, we don't know how long Julia is going to be in Japan. She has time left working with Marigold. That time left could be 2 weeks, it could be 2 months, it could be 3 months. We don't necessarily know. And in that time, we can have Stephanie win the title, and then we can move on to Julia. Roxanne can stay down there being mad and fighting everybody and trying to, give black eyes to half the locker room without being in a wrestling match like she's been doing. And all that kind of stuff until Julia gets there and you have the Roxanne versus Julia match. I think all roads led to Julia until Stephanie became available. And once that happened, I think, the famous Dave Meltzer quote, plans changed. And now we got to figure out what to do.
I agree with most of what you've said there, mainly because of the fact that the rumor was, and this is why I think Stephanie Vaquer will be before Julia as well, is that Julia, I believe, was rumored to be in the spot for Heatwave. Now, she was due to be in for Heatwave. Heatwave has now been and passed. She's had injuries, like you said about Marigold. It depends how long it's going to be. She could turn up like next week, just the same on this show, just like Stephanie Vaquer could. But like you said, Vaquer's been pushed quite heavily. You said about cutting those ties. I mean, you could literally say that Stephanie Vaquer has shown no mercy. The pun is intended there. And that could be the match that could be set for that premium live event, because it's only a few weeks away as well. You can build up that debut to that point with this big international star that's coming in. And if Roxanne succeeds or doesn't, the next path can be Julia when she comes in as well. It feels like Roxanne Perez is going to be the key component for, I mean, we've got rumors Delta's signed with WWE as well. So that's 3 big matches that Roxanne probably would need to have in NXT if they're all going to be in NXT before Roxanne is called up, because they're all the stomping ground to pass the torch, if you will, to make them the new top stars of NXT, so she can just freely go off to the main roster. But you mentioned about Julia. She could skip, because some have skipped. You know, all of the, I mean, of course, they're the bloodline players that have come in, like Jacob Fatu, Tamatonga. None of them have gone through NXT, but there are others that have come straight through to Raw and SmackDown in the past as well, not good for NXT. But of course, she was at NXT Stand and Deliver. So time will tell with what will happen with it. But I suppose one thing for sure is that we think Roxanne Perez is winning here. But I know in the past, from previous streams we've done together, that not always been the biggest Thea Hale fan. Has that changed a little bit more over time, or are we still in the same boat?
No, I mean, I've grown to love Thea like the sister I don't want. She's a delight. She's way too high energy most of the time for me. I said on the show on Tuesday that they finally found a medication to work on Thea Hale, because she was calm, cool, collected. Like, they're playing it off as this is a confidence that she has changed, that she doesn't need that energy. She doesn't need that high, frenetic energy. But she's grown so much as a competitor, and she's grown so much as a character. And they've done such a great job interweaving her into the Chase U story. And the story with JC, while it didn't end in the cleanest of ways where it made a whole lot of sense throughout the whole thing, it did great things for Thea. It made her become a focal point in the work that she's doing. Her in-ring work has gotten better and better over the course of time. She still has, as I will continue to say, the worst Kimura lock in the history of professional wrestling. It is the least believable Kimura lock. She puts that on, and I'm like, I feel like a bird could get out of that. Like, it's the worst Kimura lock in the world. However, that sit-down interview with her this week was fantastic. The work that she's done with Ridge, specifically with Ridge, has been really good, which is remarkable that anybody can get good work out of Ridge Holland. So, I mean, yeah, I've come around on Thea Hale. I'm still not a fan, but I appreciate the work that she's doing. I'm not as much of a hater. I'm drinking less haterade when it comes to, as Ashley would say, about Thea Hale. But I still love to root against her. Same way I love to root against Roxy. I think Roxy's probably one of the best women's wrestlers. Well, she's obviously the best women's wrestler on NXT right now. But that discussion quickly changes the moment anybody else pops in. I just think that there's so much wiggle room with the NXT women's division. And, Misfit Wrestling Podcast puts up that Stephanie's going to get the North American title. I don't think you can have both of them in, like, you can't have both Julia and Stephanie as individual champions in NXT. That there needs to be something that the girls are going to go for, the women are going to go for, where where a Kalani Jordan, a Jada Parker, Sol Ruka, there needs to be a route for these women, Tatum Paxley, Wendy Chu, that they can go ahead and have something to fight for, have something to continue their development. Stephanie Vaquer and Julia don't necessarily even need championships. One of them should be, but I don't think it's a smart idea to have both NXT women's singles championships on two strong competitors whom you don't want to see lose matches
at all and who aren't believable to lose to some of the other women in this division. I think it's a dangerous precedent to set, and it's the type of thing that gets set elsewhere where you all of a sudden book yourself into a corner where you have no viable competitors to beat your champions. And I think
agree.
that NXT has done such a good job of maintaining 2, 3, 4, 5 female storylines at a time that putting both titles on Julia and Stephanie runs the risk of really damaging the upward momentum and development of some of these other women. And again, we can agree to disagree. Like, that's the wonderful world of professional wrestling. And I know the internet wrestling community isn't known for its ability to agree to disagree. And normally it ends in a, verbal confrontation. But we've done such a good job of developing these talents where we're pushing out talent like Kiana James, Fallon Henley, JC Jane, who are main roster ready at this point. They're not the stars they need to be able to get TV time on a constant basis there, but they can hold their own. Look at Tiffany Stratton, somebody who 2.5 years ago had never wrestled a match in her life and is now Miss Money in the Bank, one of the top stars on SmackDown, and is going to be the SmackDown Women's Champion sooner rather than later, most likely. Or no, SmackDown Women's Champion is now the Women's World, no.
Women's Champion now, yeah.
WWE Women's Champion, yeah.
Yeah. I agree with everything, Ed. I mean, the thing is that like you said, you can do it. You can put Stephanie Vaquero as the Women's North American Champion. You can have Julia as the Women's Champion. But I agree that it should be one, not the other. I think the Women's North American Championship, you can see the picture already since they've done it. These women that arguably are not ready for the top level now all of a sudden have something to fight for, and they all feel at a good level. Like, all of a sudden you look at those people, like for me, I look at Jada Parker so much more different now because of the fact that I knew there was potential, and so much potential. She's so good on the mic. Her insults are second to none as well. Like, she's one of my favorites to watch on NXT, but I always thought it was a long way away for her to win the title in NXT. Now that Women's North American Championship's there, I'm like, I could see her being the next champion. Like, I genuinely feel like 3 to 6 months down the line, she could win that gold. Sol Ruka's already had a crack. I think she's sort of in between the two divisions, if I'm honest, but she could be someone that could hold it in the future. And there's all these other talents like Ariana Grace and, Fallon Henley, JC Jane. They're all around that area, in my opinion, where if you look at the top bracket, I do feel at the moment, this is where, nothing against Fyre Help, I feel Roxy is in a division of her own. That's my feeling. You could put, I think Fallon probably could be up in there as well because I'm really a big fan of her work. However, heel and heel, someone needs to change. So I like the idea of these girls coming in. Currently, like Julia is expected to be a massive deal. It's kind of like, it feels black and gold NXT when you hear these sort of names coming in because the reputation, precedes them coming in. They're expected to win the title. They're probably expected to be in NXT for a short time as well. And I think with regards to Stephanie Vaquero as well, I think it's going to be the same thing, going to be seen as a big deal. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do and how they're going to be when they come in. And they are the top bracket, in my opinion, of what will be that division when you've got all the other girls that have been going through the PC, that have been building and biding their time, that are sort of getting that experience of what it's like to win a North American Championship, to then build that reputation, to build that confidence, to build that experience of holding a championship, to then be ready to go for the NXT Women's Championship against the Vaquero, against the Julia, once they've gone through that North American Championship route.
Yeah, and I just think, there's so much more than just put a title on somebody and okay, now they're legitimized, or now, they're the thing. We have to understand, we all love NXT to the point where we look at it like it's main roster. Remember, it's still developmental. These people need to understand what it means to carry a championship, to be a champion, to have that championship mean something to them, and to change the trajectory of their career because of the fact that, look at Kalani Jordan. Kalani Jordan was a slightly confident person going out there working with Dana Brooke. Dana Brooke gets let go, becomes Ash by Elegance. Kalani Jordan's now left to fend for herself. What is she going to do? Is she going to sink or is she going to swim? She goes ahead and continues doing well. They put her in the ladder match. I don't want to say they shocked the world, but it shocked a lot of us because I don't think all of us had Kalani Jordan coming out of that with that championship with Jada Parker and Sol Ruka and other people in that match. But she comes out of it in that first promo coming out of winning that championship. She instantly feels more confident. She feels more in touch with who her character is. And over the course of the last, month or so since Battleground in Vegas, she's changed her character without really changing what she is or who she gets, or what she does or who she is. It's just a tonal shift in the confidence of the character. Why? Because she's holding that championship. Because she's the one who wants to legitimize that championship. And I don't think you need to put that championship on a name to legitimize it. I think you just need to go out there and have these women have the ability to be a champion, to build a credit that way. It isn't like the men's North American Championship where you were like Adam Cole, Ricochet, Johnny Gargano. You don't need to have these big names hold that championship because you need to separate the divisions somehow. There needs to be two divisions of the women's division. You need to have a division of top tier talent who is going to be competing for the NXT Women's Championship. You need to have a division of up and comers who need something to do, who can utilize the ability that the North American Championship has for them in developing their career. And then you have a middle ground with people who float in between, an upper mid card. And that's where you have your Fallon Henley. That's where you have your JC Jane, your Sol Ruca, people who can go down to work with the North American Championship and who can work to the level of more established, bigger stars like a Julia, like a Roxanne, like a Stephanie Vacour. But again, this is highly subjective. This is all based on personal preference. And that's why fantasy booking and, all of the fun stuff that we do here has logic, because nothing that anybody's saying in the chat is incorrect. You can absolutely legitimize a championship by giving it to a big name. But what does that do 6 months from now? What does that do a year from now?
Ed, I'm going to need to button just for a second. I don't know if you can hear in the background. I've got a little one that's making a bit of noise. So if I can have you continue, and if it continues when you've finished, then we can move on to Joe Hendry. I'll meet you back here in literally about 2 minutes' time. I do apologize to anybody watching.
All right. I'm going to take over. I'm going to continue talking with some of the comments. I can't put them on the screen. Eric Douglas had said, call me crazy, but I wouldn't be surprised if Thea won. I still have Roxanne winning, but it wouldn't shock me. No, I think that they've done such a great job building Thea Hale that you have the opportunity to have her win. But again, I don't think that. I always think in the steps of what's next. I love the idea of Thea winning, but then what's next about that? Thea wins here. What do we do from here? And I think that this match could, in my mind, main event this this week of television. And I think having that moment where you have Stephanie Vacour pop up and, just stand there and look at Roxanne and have Roxanne just clutch that title as they're going off the air, with Stephanie Vacour just standing at the top of the ramp looking down at Roxanne. And Roxanne, who played off that she doesn't care who comes here, she's going to take them all on, have that look of fear and desperation in her eyes after finally seeing one of them arrive. Mr. Wrestling Podcast does also say that they specifically had Kalani in the shot where they wanted to show the Vacour footage. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. But remember, they were just showing off Stephanie Vacour there, in my mind, to us, the crowd. It wasn't necessarily that we wanted Kalani there, because remember, Kalani wasn't necessarily part of the Stephanie Vacour footage. She was also part of the Tatum Paxley footage, with Tatum Paxley playing with the dolls, which I think is where they're going next when it comes to the North American Women's Championship. Is I think it's either Wendy Chu or it's Tatum Paxley that they're going to have Kalani take on, potentially, I think, in week 2 of the NXT Great American Bash stuff. I think that would be a match that we could potentially see there. But again, the fun thing about all of this is that there are so many ways and so many different options that you can do, that one person's idea isn't necessarily right or wrong. And I include myself in that. Above all, I include myself in that. I'm wrong more times than I'm right. My tag team partners in the chat here and can go ahead and carry that one out. I just think that there's I worry about, like I said, the next 6 months, the next 8 months, the next year. If you have somebody like Stephanie McCool win that NXT Women's Champion, North American Women's Championship, what does that do for the development of everybody else below her on that card? Misfit Wrestling Podcast jumps in and says if they were going to do that, they could have just done a video package like they did on Raw. Yeah, potentially. Shawn Michaels is doing something different. Again, like I said, I don't know. I'm not in the room. I watch the same thing we all watch. I watch the same programs we all watch, and I read most of the same things that we all read. So, I don't necessarily know what they're planning to do with both Kalani and with Stephanie. But like I said, I think Kalani's next step is taking on Tatum Paxley, is taking on Wendy Chu. I think that's the road we've been led down for the past few weeks with vignettes and with backstage segments, especially with the doll change from Tatum Paxley, switching from, as I called it, the white doll to the brown doll. Whereas we even had that moment, is that supposed to be me on television this week? Like I said, I think that's the road they want to head us down with that. But again, time will tell. We'll see what's going on.
We will indeed. I think Wendy Chu is the next one in line for Kalani Jordan, if I'm being honest at this point. But like you say, time will tell with it. But it does. I feel that's the same path they're going with the NXT storyline currently, for what we've seen in recent weeks. But Ed, last question quickly on the subject, and we'll go to Joe Hendry. Are you a little bit surprised that the Great American Bash, we currently don't have a North American Championship match on the line for Kalani or for Obi at the stage of recording?
I mentioned this while you were gone. I think that we're setting up, and we'll get one more set up probably this week on week 1. And on week 2, we'll get Kalani Jordan versus Tatum Paxley, or we'll get Kalani Jordan versus. I think we'll get Tatum on the Great American Bash, and something will happen there to lead to Wendy Chu versus Kalani coming up at No Mercy.
Makes a lot of sense to me. Can't
Again,
argue.
my ideas could be wrong.
I could be wrong, but Ed, I think that you could be right as well. And I do think that with Wendy Chu, that certainly is the direction it's going to go forward very, very soon. But one person I definitely want to discuss about with you is a man that's in demand right now. Not even in WWE. He's a TNA guy. Most people are upset he didn't win the TNA World Championship this past weekend at Slammiversary. But hey, say his name and he appears. And I'll say it in Swedish. Jag tror på Joe Hendry. Do you believe?
Of course I do. I mean, I've believed in Joe Hendry for a long. I was lucky enough to watch WCPW when it was around before it became Defiant. I was lucky enough to be able to get through that watching ICW and watching North Wrestling and other things like that. British / UK based wrestling, because I think North Wrestling, I think, is still UK, but it might be Irish. OTT is definitely Irish. All these places where Joe Hendry is popping up and doing all of the parody songs once he left WCPW. The prestigious gimmick in WCW was so fantastic. Working with Joe Coffey, among others that we're not going to talk about because some of them have been shoved to the side of the world of professional wrestling. We won't talk about that, but more specifically, let's remember that he worked with, Joe Coffey in that group, The Prestige, the local hero. I mean, he's been so good for so long. It's so nice to see him getting a chance in front of an American audience to go ahead and have that opportunity. And that's what TNA's given him. And I had a controversial statement the other day where somebody asked me on stream, do I think WWE signs Joe Hendry? And I go, yes, but I'd also be worried about it if I were Joe Hendry. Because I think Joe Hendry has a ceiling in WWE with the gimmick he's doing, because the gimmick is very independent wrestler. And it gets to it's only going to get to a critical mass at a certain point. And he's basically going to become R-Truth or Santino. Not that there's anything wrong with becoming R-Truth and Santino. R-Truth has had a job in WWE for 10 years because Vince loved him, because he can make him laugh. I think Joe Hendry is ultra talented. He can do amazing work. But unless the character develops another level beyond just being, say his name and he appears, the music, all that kind of stuff, because he won't be able to do the parody stuff in WWE on a weekly basis like he does in TNA, where they have a smaller thing. Because those are going to get copywritten, and they're going to be lawyers who are going to be like, Triple H, you can't do this.
Hmm.
They're going to get away with it this week, and then people are going to tell them they can't do it no more.
Absolutely,
But,
yeah. Obviously, Elias is the latest victim, isn't he, on the independent circuit with stole his job?
Yeah. Which, by the way, like I said, I think Joe Hendry's a better version of Elias. Like I said, I really think he ends up like a Santino Marella or an R-Truth, which is great. Santino Marella was an Intercontinental Champion multiple times. Santina Marella was, the winner of the Battle Royal, the Women's Battle Royal at WrestleMania 25. So, I mean, many accolades can go in that family with the Marella family. And we've got new memories being made with Miss TNA, with Miss NXT in that family with Bianca Sorelli, Ariana Grace. But like I said, at the current time, Joe Hendry has a limit. And if he wants to be more, then I think WWE is a bad route to go right away when his contract ends in TNA. Because I think he'll get saddled into a specific position with the way his gimmick is currently going.
It's a fair argument. I mean, obviously, right now the momentum is so hot that I feel that. I do feel that TNA made the wrong decision on the weekend. I'm not with everyone else that said that he's been buried. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that word. I feel in pro wrestling, but at the same time, I think it's going to be a very good program with him and Josh Alexander that's going to move forward out of this, which should be fascinating to watch for Josh Alexander as well. We'll touch on that in a couple of minutes. I know you've got something to say on that specifically, but I feel to myself that Joe Hendry, I just would like to see what he provides in NXT and what he would do in WWE. And I think in NXT, I think he'd have a very bright future, to be honest. I don't think he'd have that spot in NXT. Like you say, when it gets to a Raw and a SmackDown, that's when it can be different. But I think if you look at NXT right now, I mean, with the exception of I would say 3 or 4 names, I would say would be the same with everybody, that there'll be a ceiling that would stop them probably right now from getting to world championships and multiple main event scenes and stuff like that. I think the first name comes to mind that I think I see as prime main eventer is Obafemi. I can see him being a real big deal. But with Joe Hendry here, this is another opportunity for him to express something different that an NXT audience hasn't seen. They've not seen the Joe Hendry concert. They've not seen these parody music videos that we've seen. And the fact is as well that he has a lot of history with one Joe Coffey right now of the Gallus boys, and Gallus are not happy that Joe Hendry is appearing there. They also don't want to call Joe Hendry Scottish at this point, which just seems madness to me. But anyway, Joe being there, I imagine the song will be based on Joe Coffey. I imagine it's going to set up something for week 2. And I think for right now, with how Joe Hendry's run has been in WWE, it's got people talking every time to the point that I think he has become almost a must sign when his contract does become up from TNA.
Yeah, Joe Hendry's made himself a shit ton of money when that contract expires because everybody in the world is going to want him. And I think that the exposure he's getting with NXT is paramount to the future of his career. And I agree with you. I posted it on Twitter the other day to link to when they were working at ICW and he wrestled Joe Coffey. He did, the first few bars of Iron Man by Black Sabbath. And then it turned into a parody of I Can Be Your Hero by Enrique Iglesias, where he was being a superhero because Joe Hendry was on the indie scene and the British indie scene, as you guys will be more aware of than some of the American crew. He was Iron Man Joe Coffey, and he would often come out with the Iron Man inspired gimmick with the mask, things like that. He's a very superhero. He's a bit nerdier than people understand. Joe Coffey. He's great. But that's something fun that he did there. And it's like, I can't wait to see what comes next. Because we've all seen the AJ Francis stuff. We've all seen Moose stuff. We've all seen the Matt Cardona. And Matt Cardona is now just Edge's bitch. He's no longer Matt Cardona. He's just Edge's bitch. But yeah, no, I think that this is going to be a highlight of the night. It'll probably be what takes place right before the main event match. With whatever they choose that to be, I'm assuming it's going to be Roxanne versus Thea. And it will set up with Joe Coffey and Gallus coming out and being very angry and trying real hard not to laugh and beat up Joe Hendry. And then that sets up week 2 because we already know that they want the match because Gallus already tried to make the match for week 1 and realized that the concert was already happening. So that was a no-go.
It seemed that way, didn't it? So if that match does happen on week 2, which I think now is okay for us to now start speculating about week 2, I imagine Joe Hendry would pick up the victory.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly I think Joe Hendry's going to pick up a handful of victories, and I promised something on Taking Over on Tuesday. We're going to go ahead and drop it here. WWE likes to make a splash when they change networks. We've seen this multiple times. Especially we saw this at the most recently when they went to Fox. Kofi Kingston's WWE champion going into the first show on Fox. First show on Fox, Brock Lesnar challenges Kofi Kingston, beats him in 16 seconds. Triple H is not as beholden to the idea that, we have to make a big splash every time. But I have a feeling that there's going to be a similar big splash made the first time NXT appears on the CW on October 1st. I think that big splash is Ethan Page losing the NXT championship to TNA superstar Joe Hendry on the first NXT show on the CW. I think it solidifies the fact that NXT and the TNA partnership is an actual working relationship and partnership, and not just send us your stars, we'll send you some talent, we'll send you some money and call it a day. I think doing something like that, and again, I don't think this working relationship is a real thing in my own mind until somebody wins somebody else's championship. Even for a week, at some point, somebody has to win the championship, and you start having the battle lines being drawn, and you have people like starting to form the line of, we have to get this back. We have to bring this back to NXT. And everybody seems to be playing ball really well right now. And WWE is all in on Joe Hendry to the point that they gave him a 5-minute vignette on their television product, and they're giving him the concert this week. It's not a stretch to assume that they might put that title on him for a single week to pop a big number on that first show on the CW, to lead to a big number on show number 2, and then have him, lose the title again because Josh Alexander comes in and restarts that feud from Slammiversary, and then you can switch that all back to TNA, and there you go. And I think then they have Ethan versus Trick at the next PLE coming out of the October CW debut, which is, I believe, Halloween Havoc at the end of the month. I believe it's October 20th. And I think that's how you do that, where Trick gets that match. And you keep Trick occupied with people until then. But yeah, I think Joe Hendry, right now, wins the NXT championship. And this became a more possible idea when he didn't win the TNA championship over the weekend.
I really want it now. Like when you said this to me off air, the first thing I said to you was, give me all of this, because the idea as well that, say, if a Josh Alexander comes on over and costs him the championship as well to get it back to Ethan Page, you've got that North reunion, which is a big deal as well. And just, it adds that crossover. And as well, everyone says at the moment, is the benefit just for WWE? Is there really benefit for TNA? Look, we can see the benefits there for TNA. They had the biggest gate crowd they've had for Slammiversary for years. I mean, it was like 4,000 people at that show, which was amazing to see. And now to see as well that a lot of these talents are getting showcased. We saw Wesley over at Slammiversary as well. And I think if Joe Hendry could take I know they do taping, so it could be a little bit difficult on this, but if they could bring Joe Hendry over to do something with an NXT championship in front of fans in TNA, that would be awesome. Say the TNA special was the same week. I don't know what it would be, but say it was like Victory Road or something like that, and they had on the Friday, and Joe Hendry could just turn up at that holding the NXT championship. That would just be freaking awesome, because that would just, I don't know, it just does something for everybody. Like the thing I hated with the AEW relationship with TNA a few years ago in the pandemic, I thought it was amazing that Kenny Omega held the Impact Championship. I thought it was amazing that he showed it on AEW TV from time to time. Didn't do it enough, though, for my opinion. But when it came time to play ball and give the title back, Kenny wasn't the one to drop it. They gave it to Christian Cage, who was arguably a mid-carder at the time. They did it on Rampage as well, which I know at the time was still when Rampage did a number, but it wasn't Dynamite, and that's their biggest show. And then it went to back to TNA, but it came back on the expense of Christian Cage, who at the time, yes, it main evented the pay-per-view, but it just didn't feel like as big a name. The stock wasn't as high. It wasn't like the Christian Cage you're seeing now that's getting roasting wrestlers each and every week about their fathers. Do you know what I mean? It's like it was a different Christian at that point. It was almost like bland babyface Christian outworks everybody. So to do this in this manner that you suggested, I'm just going to say I absolutely love it because it benefits both sides massively, because of the fact that obviously Joe Hendry comes out a big winner of this as well because he gets to say he's held WWE gold. TNA obviously have the opportunity perhaps to just showcase that championship and show that one of their stars can win gold in WWE, which is just seen as a big deal for their market to arguably say that, look, we should be the number 2 here at this point, not the other competition out there. And obviously for WWE, look, they're getting these big names, talents from other shows that are probably not big names coming to their show, but they're presenting them as such to the point that I think a lot of the smarter fans who, let's be fair, NXT it attracts more of the smarter fans. It's not the casuals of Raw and SmackDown. If you're NXT, you follow everything. You don't just follow what's WWE. You probably has a good chance you know what's going outside. That's why we're excited about Stephanie Vaquer. We're excited about Julia. We're excited about all these other names that have been brought up in the stream because of the fact that they are something that we're aware of and that we watch. So that's why everyone goes mad when Joe Hendry turns up, why Jordan Grace turns up. It just shows a different level altogether, and it just shows why this working relationship between NXT and TNA really has been golden so far, in my opinion, and something like this would just be the cherry on top of that cake for me.
The other thing that this has done for WWE that's I think we all realize it, but I don't think a lot of people have said it. This is giving the TNA talent that WWE gets a chance to work with, the ones that they like. Here's an idea of what you're going to look like on our programming with our budget behind you. That's making somebody like Jordan Grace, who's never thought to really come to WWE, she's going to have to think when her contract expires, maybe I should go there. And Joe Hendry, who's told us that his goal is to wrestle John Cena, that his goal is, before John Cena's career is up, he wants to wrestle John Cena. Being the NXT champion gives him that opportunity. And plus, it gives him an in to the company. And it gives WWE an into saying, look, this isn't the old regime. You've seen how you can be presented when you don't even work for us. Now imagine when you work for us and we have the ability to make you the star we want to make you, as opposed to having to share you.
So true. I think Grace and Hendry at the moment, I think that's the one thing that would probably harm TNA in the long run is that heads will turn. But if WWE keeps feeding talents back to NXT, back to TNA, sorry, from NXT, then maybe that softens and cushions the blow. Obviously, a name like Wesley coming in, the Rascals reunion has been amazing up to this point. I've really enjoyed seeing it personally anyway. It can lead to great things on both sides. And obviously, as we go into suggesting night 2 with NXT's Great American Bash, we know already about a title match, which we'll finish on. But obviously, we've discussed that we could get Joe Hendry versus Joe Coffey. You said off air, which I agree. The Rascals beat Axiom and Frazier in that 6-man tag team match with Javon Evans this past week, which was a banger of a main event. Could we see those NXT tag team titles on the line on night 2?
I think so. I think that makes a perfect sense at this point. I thought the match we got last week was going to be the match for the tag team titles, but the Rascals seemed too high to realize that they were asked. The Rascals seemed too high to realize that they were being propositioned for a title match. Because Axiom, they're like, who's going to sit out? So it's like, all right, we're going to take you on. We're going to put the titles on the line, and you guys get a tag title shot. And they're like, no, you get all 3 of us. And it's like, all right, well, I guess we don't have to defend our titles tonight. Cool. But it makes perfect sense that we get this on night 2. It continue, especially if Axiom is going to be in the speed match this upcoming week. Again, it'll all be determined on what the next speed match is that's going on. But whatever week the speed match is going to be, where Axiom is going to be on speed, that's the week that we're going to have this match for the tag team championships, because it's going to continue the narrative of the Nathan Frazier Axiom. We have to keep our focus on the tag team championships.
So the question I'd have to say to you, because obviously Nathan Frazier got away with it, he's a bit upset with the idea that Axiom now is looking to do it with all the heat he got on social media. Does Axiom get away with it? Would they actually get past the Rascals?
Probably. I don't think Triple H or Shawn Michaels is super thrilled with the idea of Zach Wentz holding the tag team titles again. And I certainly know that Triple H probably doesn't want Trey Miguel holding the championship, since he's the only one of the Rascals who didn't come over. And I think that's one of the people that Triple H was calling out, that in that spiel that he gave on WrestleMania weekend, where everybody attributed it to Will Ospreay and could only ever apply to Will Ospreay. Let's not forget that Triple H told the same story when Trey Miguel didn't sign when Zach and Desmond did, when Wes Lee signed, that he didn't want to work hard enough. He wanted to spend too much more time with his family, which is all fine. But if you're not ready for the grind of WWE, we don't want you. That same thing came out when Trey Miguel didn't sign, because he wanted to stay at home and spend time with his family. So I don't think that the NXT higher-ups, WWE higher-ups at this point, are super thrilled with the idea of putting a title on those guys. But times have changed. Obviously, opinions have changed. But again, it kind of works against my fantasy booking if these guys win a title, because the big first championship, in my mind, is the one that's big. And I think that's the NXT championship. And if I'm going to put that on Joe Hendry, we don't necessarily want the Rascals holding tag gold as well. But
True.
I could see it. It makes a whole lot of sense. But I would see there's a bigger opportunity, I think, in having Wes hold TNA tag golds and beating Myers and Eddie Edwards. I think that might be more realistic. Or we set up the match between the Hardys and the Rascals once Jeff is medically cleared. I think that's something else that we can set up. I think that there are layers to this, but I think the Rascal side of it lies more on the TNA side than I think it does on the WWE side. But because Wesley's already said, he can't challenge North American champion. He's not in any way, shape, or form right now. The world title picture is too cluttered for him to be a part of that. I wouldn't want to send him all the way down to the Heritage Cup picture. So if he's on loan to TNA for the next 4 to 6 months, it ain't necessarily a bad idea.
No, not at all. I think he's actually capable of actually going for their world title as well. Personally, I think that he would certainly be a name that I'd be inspired to see. Elsewhere then on the show, not just saying I kind of agree with you. I don't think the Rascals would win those titles purely as well because you hear that famous old line being said of well, we never got beat for the titles. But it's okay, but this means you get your loss now. So that way it's proven the current champions are those current champions for a reason. I think Axiom and Fraser will have their problems further down the line, but they're going to get through a couple of things right now. Eric just said, by the way, the current TNA and it's ABC won this championship Slammiversary.
It's an even better match then. We don't have to worry about the system. I'm a big fan of Eddie Edwards. He's a local guy. I love Eddie Edwards. I could do without any use of Brian Myers or Moose, but I love me some Eddie Edwards. So I did forget that. Thank you for reminding me. I did not catch all of Slammiversary. I've caught bits and pieces of it. But no, yeah, so even better. ABC, the Rascals versus ABC. I'm in for that. You don't have to twist my arm too hard for that one.
Not at all. I really hope ABC come in to take on Fraser and Axiom at some point. That's a match I'm really, really hoping for, but time will tell on it, I guess.
If I'm getting dream matches for ABC, it's DIY. Yeah, if we're talking NXT, I think DIY has enough going on right now that they can kind of filter down for a couple weeks. If ABC shows up and goes, look, we're here to take on the best tag team in NXT or NXT history. I think that it would be key if they put the word history there. And Nathan and Axiom come out and they go, well, we're the current tag team champions. We're the best. And then DIY's music plays and they pop out and they go, well, yes, you're currently the tag team champions here, but we've got these shiny belts from SmackDown, which say that we're a little bit better.
I hope for all of it. I want all of it to happen. So yeah, if the gods are listening, you know what to do. But one other match then I have probably on the bingo card currently for this show, and then we'll go on to the one match that we do know actually is happening on this show. Phil Trick Williams at the moment, obviously, has been going through oh God, I forgot the name there. Shantae, the Adonis there, and obviously he's got Cedric Alexander as well. Had the match with Cedric this past week, but Pete Dunne's been lurking in the background the last couple of weeks. I feel that Pete Dunne could be a match there for Trick Williams at the Great American Bash Week 2. Would this be another stepping stone for Trick to get himself eventually back into the NXT Championship picture?
Yeah, this is another stepping stone on the we need to put roadblocks in front of Trick Williams and Ethan Page as long as we possibly can to play out that thing to get to that point. I mean, Pete Dunne attacked him after the match this week after he beat Cedric Alexander. Let's not forget that.
True story.
I mean, so that there's that too. Yeah, but I think Pete Dunne, that's a great match for Trick. Like I said, I think there's a whole lot of names that Trick Williams is going to have to fight random, underboss to get to Ethan Page. And they're not even Ethan Page's underbosses. They're just random people that he's going to have to deal with to try to get back on that road to being champion again.
Hey, I'm happy to see that Trick get himself that momentum once again. It's always fun sometimes seeing that top guy chasing rather than being champion. It just makes it more interesting. And I think we've had a lot of long-term championship reigns at the top there in NXT. So it's nice to see like it's been spread around a little bit. It felt like it was going to be Trick for a very, very long time. I've mixed it up with having Ethan Page come in and win the gold, and a big Ethan Page fan as well. So a little bit biased on it, but the fact that perhaps Trick can win this, like say later in the year again, just seems to make a lot of sense in the world to me. But we mentioned Ethan Page, and we do know this one's going to happen on night 2. So yeah, a little bit of bonus content you've got on this video, because we could have just done simply night 1 and left it. I did say it was night 1, but hey, we've gone to the speculation station. But this one is a genuine prediction. Ethan Page or Mensah. I think it's a bit obvious of where it's going to go, but this one has been building for quite a while.
Ever since Ethan Page showed up, they've been doing this. But even before he showed up, considering he was the mystery attacker to Noam Dar beforehand when everybody thought it was Trick, and then I thought Gallus took credit for it, but apparently Gallus never actually took credit for it. So, and then Ethan Page said he took credit for it. I like Oro. I think there's they've done a lot of good to make Oro feel like he's a top tier talent and a top tier contender for this championship. This is a great little storyline for Ethan Page to deal with, while they try to figure out what's the path at No Mercy, what's the path at Halloween Havoc, what's the path for the first show in the CW. Like there's those 3 shows that they've got to be like, all right, where is Ethan going? Here, here, and here. And Oro Mensah is a perfect thing to do now. Get it out of the way. Let Oro go back down the card, face, Obafemi for the North American Championship. Maybe try to go back and get Noam Dar's Heritage Cup once Charlie Dempsey has it again. They've turned, ironically, taking Noam Dar out of the equation and letting Oro Mensah be the front of this. They've turned metaphor from heels to babyfaces. And nobody's noticed it, but they've flipped them from heels to babyfaces in the blink of an eye. And the only thing they had to do was remove Noam Dar from the equation.
Says a lot about Noam Dar, doesn't it?
I mean, he loves his hand, and that's about it. Oh, and Alicia Fox.
It's a very good impression, by the way. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, they've done a good job in the transition from heels to baby faces. Oro obviously has got a bit of momentum on Page. The first time doing his own free count, but the second week the referee actually counting, which Ethan Page has been upset with both times, has now led to this match being made here. And obviously, like you say, what is the long-term direction? Because obviously it feels here Ethan Page will succeed and remain NXT champion.
Yeah, and like I said, while you were gone, I said this, and I mean, you might have heard me, you might not have. It's when I try to think about, what's going to happen and what's going to happen here, I try to think about the what's next. Because fantasy booking, it's like, we can all write a story where we fantasy book that our favorites win the championship, or our favorites do this, or our favorites do that. But what happens next? What happens to the people that win? What happens to the people that lose? And where does that go for the rest of the division? Ethan Page at the top of this division is great. And you need to put challengers in his way. So you need to find a way to have Joe Hendry get a big win, beating Gallus here and then beating Gallus at No Mercy with a tag team partner probably makes a lot of sense. A partner or 2, I think, makes a lot of sense for him there. And then you can move Joe Hendry off to something else. Trick Williams obviously might be the No Mercy direction for Ethan Page. That might be where that big match takes place, depending on how they want to push, how far they want to push that Trick match back. But I mean, it's all roads are Ethan Page right now. He's not dropping that title. He is a fantastic heel champion. And just to clarify, because I know my Canadian friends and the company I work for are Canadian are watching. Ethan Page is not upset. He said it numerous times, Steve. He's not upset that he was pinned by Oro Mensah the first time. He's probably a little upset about the second one. But the first one didn't count. He's not upset by it at all.
No, not at all. I didn't see anything mentioned about it on NXT this past week. It just
No, he didn't say it at all that he wasn't bothered by it at all. Numerous times on Twitter, numerous times on the program. He didn't go to Ava's office and demand this match and willingly put the championship on the line the week after he told them that Mensah is not worthy of a match, let alone a championship match.
Exactly. It never happened. Although with the second one, I've seen he's put the tweet, remove this from all social platforms. So I think there could be a little bit of upset on that second one, but we do think Ethan Page is going to get through it. Well, this is pretty much almost the end point for us of the video, ladies and gents. So if you've enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button, share with a friend, and subscribe as well. But I have one last question for Ed just before we're going to wrap things up. And actually, I have two questions, but this one's just a yes and no one, and it will lead into the bigger question. Are you a gamer?
Yes.
WWE 2K24 is releasing their latest DLC next week. You probably know I'm going with this now. Pat McAfee, his pack is going to be released with his crew and his cronies, whichever you want to call them, on his Pat McAfee show. A lot of wrestling fans are upset that his crew are going to be on a wrestling game. Shock horror, because no one knows who any of them are. And the fact is as well, I think what most people actually upset about is not just that they're upset they're in the game, yes, but if they were in a free version of the game, they would be less upset than a paid DLC. You have to pay to have them. So that's why a lot of people are upset. There was one of these people. I haven't done that much research. Yeah, one of them got a little bit spicy, and I do understand the idea. I got the chance to be put in a computer game, and it's amazing. I'm not going to say no. No one in their right mind would say no. Correct. But also then bashing, saying that the fan base, the IWC, and also the NXT roster, which Pat McAfee himself had a laugh and a giggle as well. Now, I'm going somewhere with this, don't worry. Shawn Michaels has put out a tweet today and has responded to this. And he more or less has said that those guys are welcome to take on his guys in NXT anytime for that ass kicking. You bring your 4, I will give you my 4. So I want to know your feelings and your response, A, I suppose, to the pack, seeing as you are a gamer, and B, the prospect of maybe something that could be working with them and NXT moving forward.
So I've seen the clip. I think it's hysterical. I'm a big fan of the Pat McAfee show. I think these guys are great. I think that they're funny. I think that the show works very well. I think Pat is a very amiable person. AJ Hawk is Darius Butler are both guys that I've known and respected for their in-ring careers. They give good insight on the show. They're fun. I honestly don't mind any of them being involved in the game, because I also see this from a business standpoint. WWE Games went to Pat McAfee and said, we haven't had you in the game for the past couple of years. What is it going to take to get Pat McAfee in the video game? And Pat McAfee, being the man that he is, says, I need my boys in the game. And they go, fine, we'll do a DLC with you and your friends, and you can all be in the game. Obviously, this upset people. I bought the Legends of WrestleMania edition. I'm getting it all for free. I've already paid my upfront money. I paid the $120 to get the deluxe version of this game, the big version. I've thoroughly enjoyed this game. I will have a whole lot of fun putting Ty Schmidt, the idiot who made the comments, and Boston Connor into the game, getting beaten up by everybody and anybody. Remember that clip of everybody putting all of the African American wrestlers into a battle royal with Hulk Hogan and just beating down Hulk Hogan? I'm going to do the same thing with these two schmucks. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. I did happen to wear my I don't have an anger problem, I have an idiot problem shirt today, specifically because of these jamokes, because I saw it on Twitter and I knew that they were only trying to look for publicity for themselves and the losers that they are, and I refused to give it to them on the Twitter machine. And I did like Sean sticking up for his kids by going ahead and being like, you're more than welcome here. And by the way, the hashtag he used was fantastic. And by the way, we all know it's not Sean doing it. We know it's Sean's media people who are doing this. Get off Pat's sack.
It's a very good hashtag indeed.
Oh, get off Pat's jock. I apologize.
There we are. No,
get off Pat's jock.
it's still brilliant. I mean, the thing is, ultimately, you've summed up pretty much there. I mean, these guys, I think the whole point of this, maybe to lead to something to do with NXT and TV in somewhere further down the line, now that there's been some response, there could be something in that. But I think that genuinely that's been done because, like you just said there, they're saying no one's going to use us. Well, if we put out a promo and saying that you are all idiots, people are going to put us in the match and beat us up. And then all of a sudden, without realizing it, you are playing with us and you're having our DLC and we are going to get used. So I think I think it's a bit of reverse psychology of what they're looking to do. And I think that they're trying to have a bit of fun with it. And although I don't agree with the decision of putting them in as DLC, it's there, and like you said, if you've paid for it, then you're going to get it. I mean, if I don't own the game currently, but if I was to, I would get the deluxe version because of the fact that I would want all the other DLCs that are involved, and rather than pay for them individually, once you do it like that, you get the whole pack, the whole lot under one go. So it's probably cheaper to do it that way anyway. So I would also be the same as you and would do it. And I'd want to have Pat McAfee in the game myself. He's someone I would like to have involved in it. But I would like to further off with one final question. Then is, does anything happen with NXT? I don't think it will, but no, you don't even tease it.
AJ would probably be fine to do something. Darius Butler would be fine to do something. They may show up and cut a promo, but this isn't Pat McAfee. This isn't a guy who, these guys don't love and breathe the wrestling business the way Pat did. They're not the fans that Pat is for this business. They're not the guys who are willing to go and get Rip Rogers to train them and put in the hard work that Pat McAfee put in to make sure when he came to NXT and worked with Adam Cole, that he was able to put on a match that not only did Adam Cole lead him through, because Adam Cole obviously did lead him through that match, but as Adam Cole has said on numerous times, Pat held up his own end of the bargain there, and we've seen in multiple other accounts, Pat McAfee's able to work with everybody and anybody in that professional wrestling ring and have a fantastic outing. These guys aren't that. They're not Pat. They're not going to do that. I think Sean could single-handedly take all of these guys out now in his career. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw maybe one or two of them, especially the ones that were talking and whatnot about all the trash, about how the NXT superstars are losers and that nobody would play with them. I wouldn't be surprised to see them get slapped backstage. Like I see them maybe essentially showing up, but we're not getting a 4-on-4 wrestling match with them.
Yeah,
as much to my pleasure, because I would be very upset if NXT would go down that route of putting as we've seen from other wrestling promotions, a Mike Tyson in a wrestling match or Shaquille O'Neal in a wrestling match for the sport of it all. WWE's hopefully left the celebrity stuff to, when we bring in celebrities to our wrestling matches, they're big fans and they know what they're doing. Bad Bunny, Pat McAfee, these guys take it seriously and they put in the work. If these guys aren't going to put in the work, let's not put them in the ring.
No, I agree. I think the slap backstage work would work quite well, to be honest. And I don't think I like the idea of having them all in war games or anything like that these days. Especially as a main roster thing now. Anyway, I know Pat did it when it was in its NXT era, but just wanted to get your thoughts and your feelings on it. I do agree with pretty much everything you have said there, and it's going to be interesting to see. Will people just beat these guys up in the game? I'm pretty sure they'll be more popular, and people will do it without actually realizing. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of statistic come up of like their popularity of how much they've been used in the game at some point, because they have done it quite a bit when the game has been released. So let's see if it does happen. Time will tell. But is there anything you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
No, thank you for having me. It's always fun to do your YouTubers think this videos, or being able to be here every year for the Great American Bash. Obviously you'll be coming over to our local establishment next year, as the contractual obligation is. So when they do Great American Bash next year, you come on over to our side, and me and Ash will go ahead and have a chit chat with you about that. But we greatly appreciate you inviting us both over here. Ash was unfortunately unavailable to make it here, but we do great work over on Tuesday nights on our local establishment. I've got the Deadpool and Wolverine review coming up with the Marvel Talk team that I'm part of on our local establishment coming up this Saturday, as I'm going to see the movie later on tonight. So got a busy week still ahead of me. Plus Hall H with Comic-Con has just started. So this Sunday or next Wednesday, we'll have our Comic-Con rumors and look back video going on. So
amazing stuff, dude. Absolutely indeed. And I highly recommend everyone to go and subscribe to your channel as well. And like I say, big group of you doing great work over there, and obviously taking over as well each and every Tuesday. So like you said yourself and Astrid with NXT Talk, and highly recommend it. And yes, I have appeared on there before for a Great American Bash. I'm sure we can arrange something for next year's Great American Bash. We have a multi-year deal, I believe, in place. So the ink is dry at this point. So certainly it'll be my turn to hop on over, and I look forward to it very, very much. But I will put the link to Ed's channel in the description below. It'll be the pinned comments, so you can just go on the comments and you'll see it there straight at the top. Click on it, hit that subscribe button. And look, I mean, to be fair, when it comes with NXT content here, we've listened to Ed for like the last hour and 20 minutes. Just give us such great stuff. I mean, we've not just had predictions that we promised you, we've had so much more, because what's next? We've literally, most of this video has been what's next. We've discussed night 2. We've discussed what's going to happen with No Mercy. We've discussed future champions, future challengers, what's going to be happening when the network goes to CW. We've gone all the way with a lot of different things. So if you've missed anything, I highly recommend you to go back and check this out, including as well the NXT TNA crossover as well. Ed, wonderful insights throughout this video. So thank you so much for being a part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve.
Anytime. Well, look after yourselves and each other, everyone. Thank you for watching. And if you've enjoyed the video, then I think please hit that like button. You're this far into it, hit that like button. Helps the channel a long way. Subscribe if you are new here, and see you for the next video. Of course, you can see the official SummerSlam live Q&A that's available now for myself and Too Sweet Kyle from On The Mark Wrestling Podcast. SummerSlam predictions will be dropping live on the channel next Tuesday, and there are some watch-alongs that will be coming as well. SummerSlam Classics already. Randy Orton Christian from 2011 is available now. The Fiend Bray Wyatt versus Finn Balor from 2019 is dropping this Sunday, and some point next week, the custody of Dominic Mysterio ladder match, Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, will be on the way. Take care. Thank you for watching. We'll see you for the next video. Take care.